And let me start the Facebook Live, and I'll let you know when we're live. And we're going to go live on PA Lyme Resource Network page. Okay, go ahead, Eric. We're live.
All right, thank you, Bill. Good evening, everybody. We're happy to be here again, our January 2026 virtual Lyme impact session. We got a pretty special evening proposed. The topic is going to be tick bite from dinner plate, from tick bite to dinner plate. We're very pleased to have Dr. Jennifer Platt with us to be giving us an overview of a co-infection, tick-borne co-infection that many people are familiar with, but perhaps not the nuances. Dr. Platt is the co-founder and director of Tick-Borne Conditions United. My name is Eric Huck. I am the president and co-founder of PA Lyme Resource Network. I also run the Harrisburg region. With us tonight is board member and Pittsburgh Lyme support group leader, Bill Moore. We're excited for this evening, and as you go through tonight's presentation, I'm sure you're probably going to have questions. What we're going to ask is you hold them to the end. If you're on Zoom, you can list your questions in the question and answer section. If you're on Facebook, add your questions to the comments. We'll be monitoring both sites. Bill Moore will be aggregating all of the questions, collecting them, and then he will present them to Dr. Platt towards the end of her presentation. So as always, the slide deck presented tonight and the video will be posted to our website in approximately 1 week. One thing I wanted to open with was to give a little bit of background information. Some of you may be aware that PA Lyme Resource Network had a meeting with the Pennsylvania Department of Health approximately 2 weeks ago. In that meeting with the Department of Health, we were looking at how we can not only be advocates for Lyme patient rights, but also be a resource to them and work in partnership to try to take a look at some of the Lyme regulations here in Pennsylvania. Some of the information I'm going to share with you now is in recognition that the landscape for Lyme disease really is changing and definitions are starting to become a little more advanced. There's a new federal Lyme definition, and it focuses on infection associated chronic conditions and illnesses. It's Lyme IACCI. It really is one of the first times that the federal government is acknowledging that Lyme patients, that even after treatment, up to 20% of patients may develop ongoing symptoms, fatigue, pain, cognitive issues, neurological complications. This is one of the first times that the federal government, this is the Health and Human Services, is recognizing that there is a persistence after treatment. Along those lines, the CDC is recognizing the complexity of Lyme disease. More and more, we're starting to see that this recognition is starting to take hold. In the old days, we would have said that we felt like we were being gaslit, that we felt like we were talking to a brick wall, that there was no recognition for what chronic Lyme patients were going through. That gaslighting seems to be dwindling down. We're not saying that it's over, but it's starting to go in a trend line in a good direction. Yeah, there has been recent federal support for persistence. In fact, we know that there are 700 studies that show after a short-term treatment of antibiotics, that bacteria does persist, it does stay alive. You're probably aware that approximately a month ago, there was a Health and Human Services Lyme Roundtable panel, 2 hour panel, broadcast live, and kind of the summation, the high points are there was recognition that there is a need for better diagnostics. There is a need for more coordinated care, and that there's a need for research that reflects the experiences of patients. This is actually starting to move the needle in a direction, again, to be altering the landscape for what is Lyme, what's the definition, and what are some of the treatment protocols. You're probably aware in 2022, the World Health Organization added 15 Lyme related conditions to its ICD-L 11 code. And as you know, that's the International Classification of Diseases. This is a world diagnostic code addition looking at some of the other health regulators around the globe. For the World Health Organization to be adding these Lyme conditions, it's kind of more, information and more recognition that Lyme and the understanding is starting to evolve. In late 2025, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services updated the guidance to explicitly include Lyme disease and related conditions in their chronic care management program. Again, we feel like these are little additions that added up are working in our favor for patients that have been denied care, have been misdiagnosed, undertreated. It looks like we're moving slowly in a better direction. We're not out of the woods yet, but we seem to be moving in a better direction. We talked about this last month, but we would like for you to mark your calendar. We will be having our sixth PA Lyme Patient Conference. It'll be April 18th at the Sheraton Valley Forge. That's outside of King of Prussia. Tickets will be $95. They'll be going on sale very soon, probably this week. There will be a window for early bird discounts, $75, and that'll last until mid-February. Some of the speakers that are confirmed are Dr. Cornish, who will be speaking on the complexity of treating Lyme and co-infections, Dr. Hinchy, speaking on natural remedy protocols, treating the 3Bs. We are looking to secure 2 speakers. We think the topics are very important to have in a day-long patient conference. Understanding some of the comorbidity issues associated with somebody that's chronically ill with Lyme disease. When your immune system starts to get worn down, where mold can take hold, mast cell activation syndrome can start to take hold, chronic inflammatory response syndrome becomes more prevalent. So there are other issues associated with just the Lyme and the co-infections that can really affect the treatment protocol and the health of a chronic Lyme patient. Our last area is going to be immune regulation. It's not just all the infection. What is going on at a cell danger response level? Polyvagal theory, nervous system regulation, the nervous system and how it overrides the healing and the immune system of a patient, vitally important in understanding. It is an area that patients that are new to Lyme, probably that's not an area that's a big concern, but for chronic illness, it's vitally important to understand that area. So I want to add and really just kind of end on a couple of slides here. We are seeking a special volunteer that can assist in our Lyme literate healthcare practitioner referral department. We're looking for someone that can help our current department candidates that are helping individuals find a Lyme literate healthcare practitioner in their area. All of this is done by email. You can do it from your home. PA Lyme would supply the training, all of the email templates. We have a list of vetted medical practitioners in the area. and you would work very, very closely with the existing individuals that work in that department. Last year, we handled just shy of 1,000 referrals, patients and parents looking for a Lyme literate practitioner in their area. We estimate to start probably 2 to 5 hours a week. If you're interested, please just send an email to info@palyme.org. That's info@palyme.org. And lastly, we're always looking to individuals that are comfortable donating. The donation code that's on the slide, you can also go right to our website and look for the donation drop down. Last year, we were blessed to really receive donations that allowed us to really have a budget where we didn't lose a lot of money. We broke even last year. We're an organization of all volunteers. We do not have paid staff. And so we're very reliant on not only grants, but donations from the general public. So if that inspires you, by all means, please help us out. With that, I would like to turn everyone's attention to really our keynote speaker for tonight. Dr. Platt is a public health professional. She's an advocate focused on advancing awareness, research, and patient centered responses to lesser known tick-borne diseases. Her work centers on health equity and challenging outdated or dismissive approaches in healthcare through education, evidence, and lived experiences. In 2012, she earned her doctorate in public health leadership from the UNC Gillings School of Global Public Health. She went on to co-found Tick-Borne Conditions United in 2018. This is an organization that really endeavors to bridge science and advocacy and elevate and overlook conditions such as alpha-gal syndrome. So with that, Dr. Platt, allow me to turn this over to you. We want to thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you both. It is a privilege. And as you intimated, this work is a labor of love for all of us that are involved with dealing with tick-borne conditions and diseases and all of the things that go with that. And I am really excited to be here tonight to share with you all what's going on in the world of alpha-gal syndrome. So, and does everything look good? You can see me?
Looks good.
Okay,
Looks
good.
great.
good.
Great. Just want to double check here. Okay. So let's see. So I first came into this work back in 2018 when the Federal Department of Health and Human Services launched the Federal Tick-Borne Disease Working Group. And they were talking a lot about Lyme disease. As you are well familiar, we have really moved the needle over the last 8 years. And being in the South, I knew that alpha-gal syndrome was growing really quickly across the southern United States and began working to help raise awareness at the federal level. And so now, concurrently, I think, more and more awareness has awareness has increased, but also alpha-gal is spreading. So I want to talk tonight and give you some background on alpha-gal, what's going on with it, what ticks are associated with alpha-gal in the United States, what kind of things to keep on your radar in Pennsylvania. And so let's see, okay, so just quick disclosures. I do have a company and I run a nonprofit and other things going on. So everybody in the room knows that one little bite can change everything. That's why we're all here, right? Because we've either been affected ourselves or have loved ones that have been impacted by tick-borne diseases. And tonight, we're going to center around alpha-gal and what that means. So I'm sure that you've probably heard of alpha-gal by now. It is growing not only in awareness, but we know that there are more and more patients who are contracting alpha-gal, or not contracting, but have a sensitivity. And I'll talk to you more about exactly what that means. But there's a big gap between awareness of it in the health, between when patients are getting it and awareness in the healthcare community. So alpha-gal is different. It's very different. It's different in the tick-borne disease world, and it's also different in the allergy world. And that's why it is just this strange space in between those two arenas. And that's why it's such a conundrum across the board. And uh, you know, it's really difficult. The good news is there's things that you can do to avoid exposure, but it's very difficult, and I'm going to talk about that as well. So I want to start out with just a little bit of background. Alpha-gal was first diagnosed in Australia by healthcare provider Dr. Cheryl Van Noonen. Her first patient was in the mid-80s. And we also know that it was starting to be recognized in the early 1990s in the United States. We do have patients that realize, after they realize they have it, we have patients from as far back as the 1960s, self-reported, and also people who think, oh, that's probably what my mom had. So we really, everybody's like, why does it seem to be so much more prevalent now? But it has been around for a while. And you may or may not have heard that relationship between how Martha Stewart comes into the mix with alpha-gal. But in the 90s, they were doing, the early 2000s. Sometimes I get my decades mixed up. They were doing some research on a cancer drug, cetuximab, which actually has some mammal ingredient in it. And some of a patient in Northwest Arkansas died. And uh, it Martha Stewart was friends with a person that was within this company, and they knew that they were probably not going to get FDA approval. And that's when she sold her stocks and got into trouble. So in the end, they realized that this was one of the first realizations that alpha-gal was a problem, that the mammal ingredients were causing fatalities. So the thing about alpha-gal, and you'll commonly see this when you hear doctors talking about it, other people, it breaks all the rules. And what that means is that healthcare providers that have been trained in allergy world have been, all allergies known, except for a couple, are a protein-based allergy. Alpha-gal is a sugar molecule. So therein lies the problem, because everything that healthcare providers have been taught about about allergies is basically the opposite for alpha-gal. And so we have to really invite people to think differently when they're learning about alpha-gal. So as I said, it is a sugar, and this is the molecule. It is found in mammals, with the caveat that it is not found in old world monkeys, apes, and humans. And you would be amazed at how many people don't really understand what a mammal is. But, the obvious, you have cows, pigs, deer, lamb, etc. But, there are a huge number of mammals, and any mammals are live bearing. If you think about that as the caveat, it's not birds, it's not fish. So mammals are live bearers. So alpha-gal, it's further complicated because alpha-gal is actually found in some other uh, organisms and places. So that further confounds it. So a lot of people that get alpha-gal syndrome, they have to learn to prevent exposure to other things as well. So just from a very high level, what happens with alpha-gal, and there's so much research going on right now in the arena of alpha-gal. We have way more questions than we have answers. But from a very high level, what happens is when a tick bites, we know now that its saliva contains the alpha-gal. Okay, that is one of the myths that's still going around, and it's going to happen for years and years and years. Ticks manufacture this carbohydrate in their saliva. They do not have to pick it up from a deer or a mouse or anything else. They have it in their saliva. Okay, so so when the tick bites, it will it's expose us to the alpha-gal in their saliva, and it causes our body to produce antibodies against the alpha-gal, and thus therein lies the reactions. So in the United States, alpha-gal, as I said, is spreading. It's been kind of bittersweet to watch this map grow over the last 10 years or so. This is a Z map, and you can actually go on, and if you have alpha-gal, please go on and put in your location. This is helping one way, a citizen science way, to help us track where alpha-gal is around the world. So alpha-gal is present on every continent except Antarctica, and associated with multiple different tick species. Obviously, not every continent has the Lone Star tick, etc. So if you zoom in and look at where it's been most concentrated in the United States, and this map is actually several years old now, but it gives you an idea of where the hot spots are. As you can see, Pennsylvania is pretty light, but I do have a more updated map of Pennsylvania, of distribution of where the Lone Star tick is being discovered right now. So the public health impacts of this are only beginning to be realized. What we know right now, if you start from the bottom of this and work our way up, a report by the CDC came out in July of 2023, estimating up to 500,000 cases of alpha-gal in the United States. And of course, these numbers are outdated now, but also it's, we don't know exactly how many, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So one of the things that we've been doing at TBCU is a survey that we started doing back in 2019 and tracking patient symptoms and experiences, and uh, to help document what exactly the symptoms are. There are some that are very commonly known and some that are much less known. So at the same time that CDC did this estimate of the number of alpha-gal patients, they also did a healthcare provider survey. And in the survey, only 42% of the providers were not even aware of alpha-gal syndrome. And of the people that were aware, so let's say it was what, 58%, less than a third of those didn't know how to diagnose or treat alpha-gal. So we were dealing with a big awareness problem, and would hope that they'll do the survey again, because I think that those numbers are getting better. So and at that time as well, about half of the patients were self-diagnosing, hearing about it from their friends, internet, news, etc. Our goal is that over time, this number goes down as well. We also know that people are continuing to have reactions after they are diagnosed. And this surveillance number, I have updated numbers at the end, but it is not a mandatory reported condition. And this, to Eric's point about how important advocacy is in helping to raise awareness, we need to know how many people are being diagnosed with it so that we can make better informed policy and decisions. So there's 5 things that I want you to take away to know about alpha-gal. And this goes back into the ballpark of it breaks all the rules. So with most allergies, reactions are immediate. With alpha-gal, reactions are typically 4 to 6 hours. They can be up to 10 hours. They can be immediate for some people. So there's this huge band of time. And when somebody wakes up in the middle of the night with trouble breathing or allergic reaction or something, something not right, they are not likely to tie it back to the steak dinner that they had 6 or 8 hours before. The second thing to know is that reactions are variable. So what you can have mild hives one time, you might have itchiness another time, you might have trouble breathing, you might have GI issues. They're never going to be they're not going to be the same. They can vary. They can also vary in intensity as well. So, and in maybe not every time. So, you may be fine one day if you had a ham sandwich for lunch, you might not have any reactions. The next time you eat a ham sandwich, you might immediately have trouble breathing. So it's very variable, and for every single person, they can be different. The third thing to know is that they can involve all body systems. So the most common reactions that people are familiar with when it comes to alpha-gal are things like hives or GI issues, breathing challenges, and those are the most common you know, associated with alpha-gal. But we're learning more and more since we've been doing this research is that reactions can go across all body systems. The fourth thing to know is that test positivity doesn't correlate with reaction severity. And this is another example of how it is different than protein allergies. So with protein allergies, they'll say, you have like I think it's class 1, 2, 3, like they grade allergies in terms of severity. The higher the number, the most severe the allergy. With alpha-gal, you can have the lowest, which is 0.1, is considered a positive alpha-gal test, and you can have severe reactions. You can have a very high number, and you may not you may have very minimal reactions. So that's a really important thing for people to understand. Is just because they have a big number doesn't mean that they'll have severe reactions, and just because they have a small number or even a negative number for some people doesn't mean that they're not going to have reactions. And then the last thing is that many patients don't recall a tick bite. And the range that I've seen is from 20% to 50% of people never saw a tick bite, or a tick, I should say. And as you know, with the black-legged tick, ticks are very, very small if they're larval ticks. And larval ticks, especially lone stars, can, they do have alpha-gal in their saliva. So they may be so small that people never even saw the tick. So that's another thing to remember, is that people don't recall a tick bite. And as well as that, there is some growing evidence that there might be other kinds of bites or organisms that can induce alpha-gal allergy. But this is, falls into the area of there's so much we don't know about it. So just a quick overview of the symptoms of alpha-gal. I mentioned hives. I've mentioned anaphylaxis. Angioedema is, the doctors like to use the big words, right? It's like, it is similar to hives, but it's a deeper layer. So it's, kind of redishness on your skin, but still itchy. GI distress, and that goes across the whole gamut, all the way from minor things like belching or acid reflux, diarrhea, vomiting. It's the whole gamut of GI issues. And some of the lesser known are change in blood pressure, swelling, and then chest symptoms. So that is like heart rate. Like maybe your heart rate speeds up, or, it's like irregular heartbeat is another symptom. So as I said earlier, it is really difficult to diagnose because people can have delayed reactions, and they don't associate, exposure to symptoms. And we are also learning that it's not just consumption of ingredients, it is other kinds of exposures. There are a growing body of evidence. We're still working on getting it published, that people react to airborne exposures, topical exposures that can be wearing wearing wool or sitting on a leather couch. Those are the people that are much more sensitive. And remember, this is, as I said earlier, that not everybody reacts to everything. So it's just, and that further makes it so difficult to pin down. Okay, so over here we have on the the right side of my slide is you know, are examples of different areas of the body that can be affected. And I think most of those I've mentioned in some form or fashion. Uh, Taste is one thing that I didn't mention. That's like a kind of a weird um, uh, aftertaste, if you will, trouble swallowing, hoarse voice. And then there's also several neurological symptoms that people are reporting, and the anxiety, confusion, brain fog, fatigue, those can also be considered symptoms as well. Okay. So this is a snapshot from our ongoing patient survey that we've been doing. And this gives you a sense of the range of gastrointestinal symptoms that patients are experiencing. I think we're over about 4,000 participants on this study right now, but if anybody here actually has been diagnosed with alpha-gal by a healthcare provider, we'd love for you to participate. It's data that we're collecting. We plan to keep the survey open indefinitely so we can continue to collect evidence on the range of symptoms. So these are some cardiovascular examples of symptoms that people can have. And again, I want to remind you that not everybody has every body system of symptoms. That can be a tongue twister, but this is just to give you a sense of like the range again. And you can see our poster here. I think that is included in the references. We're actually working on writing this up, but this was a poster we presented at the Quad AI conference a few years ago, the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, I think. Okay. Okay. And then this was a second poster that we used some of the same data to look at the relationships between, uh, you know, how reactive people were, like in terms of severity of their symptoms, but also the length of time and underlying medical conditions. So we found some really interesting things in this, and this is a poster that we are also as well working on publishing. But over a third of our participants reported having a vitamin D deficiency. That was a new finding. 23% reported having asthma. And for allergists, that wouldn't be surprising because a lot of people with allergies have asthma. So that was not a terribly surprising finding. Um, and then, we're tracking how reactive people are versus the type of underlying condition that they had. Oh. Okay, so um, there, uh, the in order to have a positive alpha-gal diagnosis, you have to be two criteria have to be met, and this is a federal case definition. You have to have symptoms. You have to be symptomatic. And you also have to have a positive alpha-gal test. And it's fairly easy to get a test. It should be, hopefully healthcare providers are more and more willing to order this for patients. These are the test codes. Um, a lot of times healthcare providers that are not as aware of it may accidentally order the enzyme alpha galactosidase, and it is completely different. That has nothing to do with alpha gal. But I also just found out that you can actually order this test online and then go to a local lab and get a blood draw. So I found it in several places. I was just spot testing around the country, and I did find that places in Pennsylvania, there are some states that don't allow patients to order their own tests online. I think New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island in particular, but in Pennsylvania, you should be able to do it. Um, and so I want to talk more about that and why I think it's important in Pennsylvania about why you might want to consider it if you feel like you have some of these symptoms. There are a couple of different alpha gal tests. So there's the main alpha gal test, but then you may also see an alpha gal panel. The most important thing is the absolute, the alpha gal test itself. The panel, in addition to being more expensive, I don't feel like it provides much more important information. What the panel is going to test is your reaction to different kinds of meat, beef, lamb, pork, and that I think just causes confusion. So, but I did want to say that sometimes the healthcare provider will order the alpha gal panel, um, and that's something to keep in mind. The alpha gal, just the alpha gal IgE test is the fundamental one that you would want to get. Okay, so I mentioned briefly, of course, that all mammals contain, or except for the old world apes, contain alpha gal. But alpha gal is found in a lot of other uh, especially non-food products that can have alpha gal. Um, and because they have mammal of some form, usually, or the alpha gal itself. Um, so there are medications, vaccines, uh, anytime something has gelatin in it, it can have alpha gal because it could be a mammal derived gelatin. There are other sources of gelatin that don't contain mammal, so you then have to find out, does that gelatin contain mammal? So it's very complicated. It's not straightforward. Um, and along the same lines, glycerin, magnesium, stearate, bovine extract. So you have to be really careful when, if you have an alpha gal diagnosis, and start paying attention to when you have triggers and what might be causing it. I didn't get a chance to mention this earlier, but I um, I actually contracted alpha gal back in 2023. So long, or 24, 24, fall of 24. So long after I'd been doing all of this work in tick-borne diseases, I got two Lone Star larval tick bites. And a couple of weeks later, I just started having the absolute most intense stomach pain that I've ever had. I mean, I would equate it to labor level pain. And it was a medication that I was taking. It had lactose in it. And I was lucky. Because I've been doing this work, I recognized the symptoms and I called my doctor. I said, I think that I might have contracted alpha, I might have alpha gal now. And so I did the lab work, and sure enough, it came back positive. So these are just some things that I wanted you to get you thinking about where alpha gal is. Okay, so very quickly, I just want to talk about, if you actually have alpha gal, what should you do? And I didn't put this on the slide, but I would say number one, don't panic and know that you're not alone. There are many thousands of us that have alpha gal now. It is and there's incredibly supportive patient community. There are some great resources out there. Um, but these are the things to start thinking about if you have alpha gal. So number one, of course, is to avoid mammal meat products, other things. Um, there and there are some healthcare providers that say, well, you don't have to avoid all of it. Um, and of course, there's the caveat that I'm not a medical doctor, but overall, the convention is that you need to avoid it at least until you can figure out what your triggers are. Um, and then, especially make sure that you're avoiding those. So, see an allergist, work with an allergist to create a care plan. There are no cures per se for alpha gal. Avoidance is the main treatment right now, but there are lots of things that you can work with your allergist to help mitigate your symptoms. This is really important, and I don't think it's practiced as widely as it should be. But everybody that has an alpha gal diagnosis should carry an EpiPen with them. And actually, they should have two because it is just fundamental to have that available. You may never ever need it, but it's much better to have it um, and not need it than to need it and not have it. Fourth, obvious, is prevent tick bites. That is like the number one way to avoid getting alpha gal is in the first place is prevent tick bites, but also after you have it, you want to do as much as you can to actually prevent getting more tick bites because that can make it your reactions even worse in some cases. And then the last thing is really to educate others, right? Because we have to, we're on a big learning curve and it's going to take a lot of effort. It's the same with others with tick-borne diseases, right? So we have to educate everyone around us about these conditions and what it takes, what is needed. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Pennsylvania. I'm trying to be aware of the time and allow plenty of time for Q&A. But let's talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania. So in the United States, big picture, we've got several ticks that we know manufacture alpha gal in their saliva. The most common tick that you hear about, of course, is the Lone Star tick, Amblyomma americanum. It's very prevalent across the southern United States. It is, and especially on Long Island, it's making its way north. Um, and the overlap challenge with this is that over the years, we, especially at Tick-Borne Conditions United, noticed that people that had been diagnosed with Lyme disease were reporting to us that they realized that they could not eat red meat. And this is something that we've been saying to the CDC for many years, is that we really need to try to figure out more about what's going on. Are people being misdiagnosed with Lyme and they might have alpha gal? Do they have both? And or is it all of the above? I would love to see the day when people that have a Lyme disease diagnosis are also tested for alpha gal. And this is especially important to me because what I think for some people with Lyme disease who are so sick and they've been taking medications years and years and years and they're not getting better, if they have alpha-gal and they don't know about it, and their medications have gelatin that are contain mammal, then maybe they're just keeping themselves, they're not getting better because that exposure is ongoing. So, that is something that I think is really important to keep on your radar in the Northeast, as this as awareness of alpha-gal continues to increase. The Lone Star tick by far is spread by deer. So I actually think of deer as tick factories, and they can have hundreds and thousands of deer on them. And as the deer go out and about, they are picking up and dropping Lone Star ticks everywhere. So what's going on in Pennsylvania? Of course, alpha-gal is not yet a reportable condition in Pennsylvania. And we do know that there are Lone Star ticks present in Pennsylvania. They're very patchy. Mostly in the southern counties. I'll show you a picture in a minute, but they are starting to track the spread of Lone Star ticks. And what the CDC considers as an established population is that they find 6 or more ticks of one life cycle stage. So larvae, nymphs, adults, those are the life cycle stages, or more than 2 or more life stages in a county within 12 months. So let's say they go out and they find a bunch of adults one time, and then they go out and they find some larvae. So they know that it's now established in that county. So we've got, the results here, picture representation of this. And I know this still is not a great graphic, but I had AI do this for me using the most current CDC data that I could find, which is more current than that map I showed you earlier. And this is what is available through 2024. So as you can see, the southern part of the state reported, established, and then coming in from the Northwest as well. One thing that is really important to understand, and a lot of us have heard, we hear about, oh, ticks, climate change is, tick populations are spreading because of climate change. It is very complicated, and the answer is not that simple. What we know from the 1700s from explorers that were in the United States, they actually documented presence of the Lone Star tick as far north as Canada. So then what happened, they came in and did massive land change, right? Deforestation, cut down trees, and it wiped out the Lone Star tick populations for decades, right? So now you can essentially say that the Lone Star tick is reclaiming that territory that it has had in the past. The other thing about alpha-gal in Pennsylvania that I want to make sure that you know is that the behavior of the Lone Star tick versus the behavior of the black-legged tick, which you all are quite used to, are completely different. Lone Star ticks are aggressive biters. They can sense CO2, which is, us breathing, from a long ways away, and they will track towards that source. So they are, I had a client who said to me one time, he said, because I live out in a rural area of North Carolina, and he works on his truck, on his gravel driveway, underneath this truck. He said it's not a matter of if they come, it's a matter of when. So he knows if he's on the ground working on his truck, they're going to sense him from the woods, down, in his yard and come. The other thing about Lone Star ticks is they have other disease, they have diseases that they're carrying. Okay. So especially ehrlichiosis. That's what I contracted back in 2011. And that's how I even got into this whole arena of working in tick-borne diseases and public health, is that I contracted ehrlichiosis, and it was debilitating. Even being in public health, I'd never heard of it, and it's very, very bad. So that I imagine the case rates of ehrlichiosis are going to be increasing as well. So, and then we have this, the Department of Health has, they are aware of, residents that have, reported having alpha gal, and we need to educate doctors. So this goes back to the comment that I made a while ago, is that we do wonder if what is going on with black-legged ticks and having alpha gal in their saliva, and the growing numbers of Lyme patients that have self-reported to us that they notice that they cannot eat red meat. And in the fall, I guess, let's see, this was last spring, CDC, there are a couple of case studies, case reports that have been published now of patients who acquired alpha gal, and they knew it was a black-legged tick. Okay, just very quickly about protection. I know you all know all of this. I really encourage people to think about protecting yourselves on many levels. We've all been conditioned to wear repellents. We're treating our pets. More and more people are treating their properties. There are really great options out there for all of this. Across the board, you can have, EPA approved products. You can have, there are holistic or, quote, natural ingredient products. There are products across the spectrum that work, that are effective. Other things to do: daily tick checks, maybe even a couple times a day. And then I put dryer. I didn't have a time to put a picture up here on the dryer, but one of the best ways is, as soon as you come in from being out, whether you've been in the woods or working in your yard or area where you might have risk of exposure, is to strip down and throw all of your clothes in the dryer. Our inclination is to throw everything in the washer, but ticks can actually survive for much longer in water than you would expect. They've done studies where they found ticks in waters, surviving in water 60 to 80 days, the Lone Star ticks in water. So water alone does not kill, but heat kills. And what we know about the dryer is you run your clothes through on high for 12 to 15 minutes, and that should do the trick. Okay, tick bite, what to do if you get one. Don't panic, remove your tick. There's some great information on the CDC website about how to deal with ticks, and removing them. And again, I know you all are always aware of a lot of this. I want to talk just very quickly about what is going on in the arena of advocacy and research, and then we'll have time for questions. As I've said, it's not mandatory to be reported in many states. That is changing. Things are getting better and better. Since that report came out in 2023, we've got several states now that are requiring reporting of alpha-gal. And uh, concurrent with that as well, there's, more and more spread. You may have seen the articles from this summer about huge numbers of people on Martha's Vineyard have been diagnosed with alpha-gal. At the tick-borne disease or the Lyme disease roundtable that Eric mentioned earlier, Secretary Kennedy mentioned alpha-gal. It was like this third or fourth sentence that he mentioned in his introduction. And one of the panelists is a representative from Virginia. He talked all about alpha-gal. So it's becoming more and more prevalent and on the radar. I've talked about the gaps of healthcare providers. And this is something that was really interesting is I don't think we really understand the numbers. And this is one snapshot of data on numbers of alpha-gal diagnoses that we were able to get using data from 2017 to 2021. And up until 2021, there was mainly only one laboratory in the United States that was running the alpha-gal test. And so we could look at this data in a, defined, accurate snapshot. It's really not possible to do that now because it's not reportable. Okay, lots of implications of dealing with alpha-gal syndrome. It is, it's like other tick-borne diseases. We have the same challenges, right? We have people that are sick, we have people that can't work, we have people that have expensive healthcare bills, needless surgeries. It might think that they have a, you know, expensive GI surgery that's really wasn't needed. So all kinds of things going on, changes in purchasing behavior, red meat consumption because of this. These are the states where alpha-gal is reportable, and this is already outdated. I think a couple of weeks ago, South Carolina, for example, now requires alpha-gal to be reported. So there's a lot going on at the national level. There are several bills in Congress to make it a nationally reportable condition, also to make it reported as an allergen. I'm sure you've heard about the 9 major allergens: dairy, wheat, soy, etc., fish. Anyway, so there's an act, and this is one of those where it literally takes an act of Congress to get it listed into the ingredients. And then there's another. So there's a lot of work going on in this arena to raise awareness and to continue to help people understand what's going on and to get better. So with that, I want to turn it over for questions. We've got a good amount of time here.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Platt. Yeah, we'll take the questions. If you're on Facebook and want to drop us a message through the comments, that's fine. If you're on Zoom, please use the Q&A feature. Let me see. Yes, okay, we already have one question coming through Zoom. What are some natural products, solutions for tick control in your backyard?
So there is, I don't know if you remember from the disclosure, I run a natural pest control company, and we use a spray that has a coconut base. It also has essential oils. So there's more and more research going on that shows that essential oils can be very effective in repelling ticks. in terms of the Lone Star tick, it is really important not only to eradicate the ticks that you have, but also to have a scent. That's what I've learned here in North Carolina over the past 10 years, is that they are repelled by the smell. So if you think about it, like they're attracted to CO2, but so there's something about the Lone Star that makes them more attracted, to smells.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else have questions? Please either drop them onto Facebook or to the Zoom Q&A feature here. Eric, do you have any questions from your end?
Yeah, Dr. Platt, I got a text. Um, it was in reference to the Pennsylvania map. What's the
Mhm.
difference between reported counties and established counties?
So the established counties have to meet the CDC definition. They find a certain number of ticks versus or life cycle stages. So that's considered an established population. So the established population is that it is there and it is reproducing and it's there. Reported counties is just where they found it, but they haven't met that criteria yet of considering it, being able to consider it established.
Gotcha. One other individual, you had mentioned that you had contracted alpha gal. Was curious how you're doing now.
Oh, that's so nice. Um, you know, I'm doing a lot better. I'm not as reactive as I was at first, but I still have inadvertent exposures where it's just, like I might have very light hives one day and I don't know where it came from. So I'm doing a lot better. That's very, thank you for asking. And it's an ongoing challenge. Luckily, I'm not as reactive as I used to be, which is fantastic because that when it first happened, it was very interesting. I actually, I was on that medication that had lactose in it, and I was starting to suspect something was wrong. But what cinched the diagnosis for me is I have a teenage son who was having a midnight snack of lasagna one night, and I woke up and I had immediate nausea. And I was like, yep, it's alpha-gal. So like I said, I was lucky. I figured it out. And I am not that reactive now. I am not fume reactive anymore, which is good. And I also have underlying other tick-borne conditions, right? So I've had ehrlichiosis, they've found Lyme and Babesia. So we don't know the dance of how all of these conditions interact with each other. And that's, that's where the research is like what's going on with like you said, the chronic conditions now, considering understanding that Lyme is a chronic condition. I call it a silver pandemic lining. Out of all of the research on COVID, they figured out that, maybe some of these people don't have long COVID. They have long Lyme. They have chronic Lyme disease. And so we've unearthed so much over the last few years about understanding chronic conditions and their impacts. So for me, it's just like, just heaping alpha gal on top of everything else.
Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, we have, it doesn't look like a question, it's more of something that somebody would like to share. This person is saying many medical providers in PA do not have basic alpha-gal knowledge. The CDC and Dr. Scott Commons have free CMEs available for healthcare providers. There's an excellent seminar on alpha-gal on tick-borne conditions united too.
Mm. Yeah, so there are some great resources. In fact, that last slide, I didn't show the resources slide, but I think you all, when you provide the recording, will you actually provide the slide presentation as well? People can access that. Yeah. Yeah, there's some great resources out there. CDC website's a good place to start. Alphagalinformation.org, I think is the address, is another great place. Another resource is called Pill Clarity, and they were previously called Vegan Med, but they will go in and help you figure out if your medication is free of alpha-gal. The challenge with medication manufacturing is one lot might be fine and then the next lot isn't. So they work really hard on helping patients with that. So there's a growing number of resources. And yes, we have offered CMEs for healthcare providers, and CDC is working on that as well.
All right, we have someone that would like to thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about people who have Lyme and co-infections with ongoing health conditions and possibly alpha-gal syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. And
And
if you have both of those, I would be very grateful if you do our survey. And it's on our website as well, tbcunited.org. It helps us. The more information we have, right, the better we can advocate for this.
yeah, someone is asking, would you recommend having alpha-gal syndrome information at Lyme conferences? I'm going to say yes to that.
Yes,
So yeah,
yes.
so Eric mentioned our upcoming patient conference in April, so we'll make sure we have information about alpha-gal available for that.
Mm, absolutely.
I don't have any other questions. There's still time. Anyone out there would like to ask a question? There's still time. I'm going to check Facebook one more time to see if anything has popped in out there. Not seeing anything.
Nothing else?
No.
Dr. Platt, just want to thank you very much. Very, very informative. Our experience is that the slide decks and the video recording really go a long way. So I can only imagine that we're going to get future inquiries into alpha-gal, and it's always good to be able to refer somebody back to our library. So for those of you that haven't been on our website, palyme.org, you can see most of our virtual Lyme sessions archived there. We also have a YouTube channel, so there's really just a wealth of information. We received last year a grant. We have turned all of our brochures and have translated them into Spanish. We're going to be hosting them on our website very shortly. So, servicing the needs of the Hispanic community, it's really very important to us as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the February virtual Lyme impact will be Dr. Shannon Smith, and it's going to be on immune dysregulation and getting better working through the immune system. So we'll certainly be getting information out. Remember that date again of April 18th. That's going to be at the Sheraton Valley Forge. It's in King of Prussia for our patient conference. Probably within a handful of days, we're going to be having emails. We'll get it out on Facebook. The early bird discount will be until February 15th, so you'll be able to save $20. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it for an evening. Bill, thank you very much as always. Dr. Platt, thank you. And everybody have a good evening now. Good night.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dr.
Good
Platt.
night.
Good night.
Uh-huh.